AITAH for leaving my party after finding out my parents lied. My name is Elena. I'm 22, and 2 weeks ago, I graduated from university here in Chennai. It was supposed to be one of the happiest nights of my life. For years of endless work, late-night study sessions, breakdowns in the library, and barely surviving on instant noodles, all finally worth it. For months, I'd been dreaming about this day. Walking on stage, hearing my name, feeling that sense of pride, seeing my parents in the audience, clapping, smiling, maybe even tearing up. It was supposed to be our moment, a happy ending after years of struggle. But that night turned into something I can't seem to forget. My parents, Javier and Judith, were ecstatic when the invitation came for the graduation ceremony. My dad even took the day off work, which almost never happens. He kept saying, "This is our victory too, Elena. We made it." I laughed when he said that, thinking he was joking, but maybe he wasn't. My parents have always treated my education like their personal battlefield. Every exam, every grade, every success or failure somehow reflected on them. Still, I wanted that night to be different, peaceful, loving, a clean memory. The ceremony was being held at a gorgeous event hall attached to a hotel by the beach. When we arrived, the air smelled like the ocean, and soft instrumental music played from the speakers. Fairy lights hung across the ceiling, and the stage shimmered with gold drapes. Families dressed in their finest, proud moms, teary-eyed dads, nervous students. I wore a pale blue sari my mom had chosen for me. She said it brought out the color of my eyes, and when she saw me step out of my room, she actually gasped. For a moment, she looked like the mom I remembered from childhood, proud, beaming, tender. Before the ceremony, my classmates had organized a small pre-party, a mix of students, professors, and families. It was cheerful, loud, full of laughter and cameras flashing every second. Tables of appetizers and drinks filled the room, and the whole place buzzed with energy. At first, everything was perfect. My mom was chatting with other parents, her glass of wine barely touched. My dad was laughing with my professor, cracking bad jokes, and I actually felt relaxed, like maybe this night could be exactly what I wanted. But then, I noticed small things. My parents started disappearing. At first, it was 10 minutes, then 20. They'd step out, come back smiling too wide. My mom's lipstick slightly smudged, my dad's shirt a bit wrinkled. I brushed it off. Maybe they were just talking outside. My dad was a smoker, after all. But after the fourth time, something inside me started to ache. I saw Madeline, one of my closest classmates, give me a nervous glance. She'd been trying to get my attention for a while, but I was too busy trying to focus on keeping the smile on my face. When I finally went over, she whispered, "Elena, I don't know how to say this. Some of the parents are outside, doing something weird. And your parents are there too." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean doing something weird?" I asked, my voice shaking. She hesitated, eyes darting around. "You don't want to see it." Her tone made my chest tighten. My mind spun through every possibility, and I couldn't breathe until I saw it for myself. So I slipped out quietly, barefoot, my heart pounding in my ears. And that's when everything shattered. Behind the hall, near the parked cars, a small group of parents stood in a half circle, laughing too loudly, passing something around. The air reeked of smoke, not the kind from cigarettes. My mom's hands were trembling as she tried to hide whatever she was holding, and my dad looked up just in time to see me standing there. Our eyes met. He froze. My mom's face went pale. For a few seconds, no one said anything. The sound of the waves crashing nearby felt louder than ever. Then my dad opened his mouth, as if to explain, but I couldn't stand there another second. I turned and walked away. The gravel cut into my bare feet, but I didn't care. I walked past the security gate, past the waiting cars, until I found myself sitting on the curb near the road, trembling. I didn't cry at first. I was too numb. The hotel guard walked over, concern etched on his face. "Madam, are you all right?" I couldn't even form words. I just shook my head. When the numbness finally broke, the tears came all at once. Ugly, uncontrollable sobs, the kind that leaves your throat raw. I cried for my parents, for myself, for the version of them I thought existed. By the time I got back to my dorm that night, it was almost midnight. My phone had blown up, 23 missed calls, 15 messages. "Mom, where are you?" "Dad, don't make a scene." "Mom, it was nothing serious." "Elena, please don't overreact." "Dad, everyone was doing it." I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then I typed one message and sent it. "You ruined my night. You couldn't stay clean for one evening. You lied to me. I hope you're proud." Then I turned my phone off. I didn't go home that weekend. I couldn't. My roommate Sawyer didn't ask for details. She just made me tea and handed me her blanket. I remember sitting on her bed, clutching a pillow, shaking from the anger I didn't know what to do with. For days, I avoided their calls. My mom left voicemails saying, "You're being dramatic." My dad sent messages like, "You'll understand when you're older." When I finally saw them again a few days later, I felt my throat tighten before I even walked through the door. My mom smiled nervously, stepping forward as if to hug me. I stepped back. "Elena," she said softly, "we didn't mean to hurt you. It was just what?" I interrupted, my voice breaking. "Just ruining the one night that was supposed to be mine? Just making a fool of me in front of everyone." My dad sighed sighed loudly. You're overreacting. It was a bit of fun. Everyone was doing it. You think we're the only ones. I stared at him, disbelief washing over me. I don't care what everyone was doing. I'm not everyone's daughter. I'm yours. That silenced them for a second. My mom tried to speak again, her voice small. We were celebrating. You graduated. We just went too far. Too far. I laughed bitterly. You embarrassed me. You humiliated me. I can't even look at you without seeing that. My dad's face hardened. You don't understand what it's like to be an adult, Elena. Life is stressful. We've done everything for you. Sacrificed so much. I cut him off. And I didn't ask you to do drugs in return. His jaw tightened. Watch your tone. That's when I felt something snap inside me. Years of being told to be the good daughter, to not make scenes, to forgive quickly. It all broke. I am watching my tone, I said, voice trembling. You're just not used to me talking back. Then I turned and walked out again. They didn't follow me this time. That night, I cried until I couldn't anymore. After that night, I stopped visiting home for a while. My parents called almost every weekend, but most of their messages sounded defensive, never really apologetic. My mom would text things like, "You'll understand when you're older. Life is stressful. You're making this bigger than it is. We didn't ruin your night. You ruined it by walking out." Each time I read her messages, I felt something close inside me. I didn't reply, not out of spite, but because I didn't know what to say anymore. It felt like every word they said was a way to shift the blame, to pretend it hadn't happened. And my dad, he didn't say much at all, just sent short, emotionless texts like, "Hope you're studying well," or "Let us know if you need anything." He didn't talk about that night, as if pretending it never happened could make it disappear. But silence doesn't heal anything. It just makes wounds rot deeper. Then, one Friday afternoon, I got a call from Uncle Eric, my dad's younger brother. I hadn't spoken to him in months, but I could tell from the sound of his voice that something was wrong. "Elena," he said, his tone calm but heavy, "your dad's been admitted to the hospital. Nothing too serious, just chest pain and high blood pressure. But you should come." For a moment, I couldn't move. My heart raced. My hands went cold. Despite everything, the idea of losing my dad terrified me. I reached the hospital an hour later. The smell of antiseptic and the quiet hum of machines made everything feel unreal. When I walked into the room, my dad was lying on the bed, tubes connected to his arm, a heart monitor beeping steadily. He looked smaller somehow, fragile, not the man who used to scold me for staying up late or tell me to toughen up when I cried. My mom was sitting beside him, her eyes red and swollen. When she saw me, she didn't rush over like I expected. She just whispered, "He was trying to quit everything, Elena. It's been hard." That word, quit, hung in the air. She told me the truth that night. What they had been doing at my graduation wasn't some reckless one-time mistake. It had become a pattern, something that started as fun at parties, then turned into a way to cope with stress, pressure, aging, everything they didn't talk about. It started small, she said through quiet sobs. A few times at gatherings with friends. Then it became once a month. Then every weekend. We thought it wasn't a big deal, until it was. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to scream, to ask how could you, but all I felt was this heavy, quiet sadness. The kind that doesn't explode. It just sits there, pressing on your chest until it hurts to breathe. For a few days, I stayed with them. I cooked, cleaned, helped with medication. The house felt eerily quiet, like everyone was walking on eggshells, afraid that one wrong word would shatter the fragile peace. On the third evening, I found my dad sitting on the balcony, staring at the sunset. He didn't notice me at first. Then, without turning his head, he said softly, "You were right to walk away that night." I stayed silent, unsure if I wanted to hear more. He sighed. "I embarrassed you. I embarrassed your mother. I embarrassed myself. I thought I was in control, but I wasn't." That was the first real apology I ever got from him. Not defensive, not angry, just honest. And in that moment, I didn't know whether to forgive him or to cry harder. Still, the weeks that followed weren't easy. My dad's recovery was slow. My mom had her own struggles. She'd been using too, though she hid it better. She started therapy first and eventually convinced my dad to join. There were relapses, arguments, and nights when my mom would call me crying because she didn't know if they'd ever get through it. Sometimes I wanted to walk away again, but then I'd remember how my dad looked in that hospital bed, fragile, human, scared, and I stayed. Slowly, painfully, things began to change. My dad started attending group therapy twice a week. My mom began volunteering at a local community center, trying to fill her days with something positive. They both apologized again, separately this time. Each apology felt raw, unpracticed, but real. Still, trust doesn't rebuild easily. One night, when I went home for dinner, I saw an old bottle of wine sitting on the kitchen counter. My heart stopped. My mom must have noticed, because she immediately said, "It's for cooking." I promise. I wanted to believe her, but part of me didn't. I couldn't. That night ended in another argument. My mom cried, saying, "You'll never see us differently, will you? You'll always think we're monsters." I told her I didn't think they were monsters. "I just don't trust you yet." She nodded quietly, and for once, didn't argue. A few days later, my dad called. He said he was going on a walk every morning now, trying to feel normal again. He told me about therapy, how hard it was to face the truth, how ashamed he felt every time he thought about my graduation. He said, "I still see you walking away that night, Elena." I think that's what saved me. That sentence broke me. I didn't realize until then that sometimes walking away is what wakes people up. Not anger, not shouting, just distance. 3 months later, things were different. Not perfect, not even close, but different. My dad's been clean for 2 months now. My mom's trying too, though I can see she still struggles with guilt. They argue less, laugh more, and sometimes even invite me over for dinner without any tension. Last weekend, we went out together for the first time since my graduation. Just the three of us. No drinks, no drama. We sat at a small restaurant by the water, and for the first time, we talked about normal things: movies, neighbors, my job applications. When dessert came, my mom leaned across the table and said, "We're proud of you, Elena." Truly, this time, I believed her. The end. Elena, you're not the AITA, not even close. What you did wasn't cruel, it was honest. You hit your limit, and instead of exploding, you step back. That's not disrespect, it's self-respect. Your parents had one job that night: to show up for you. Instead, they made your graduation about their chaos. You didn't embarrass them, they did that all on their own. Walking away wasn't overreacting, it was protecting your peace. You didn't cut them off to be dramatic. You just couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. And yeah, your dad saying everyone was doing it, that's not an excuse, that's deflection. You didn't owe them patience in that moment. You owed yourself space. But even after all that, when he ended up in the hospital, you still showed up. You didn't have to, but you did. That shows heart, not hate. You weren't pretending the past didn't happen. You were just strong enough to see the human side beneath all the mistakes. That's real growth. Your distance made them face what they'd been avoiding for years. Sometimes silence hits harder than shouting. You gave them consequences without cruelty, and that's rare. The fact that they tried to change after that proves your boundary mattered. You don't have to forgive everything, and you don't have to rush trust. It's okay to protect yourself and still care. You can love people from a distance if that's what keeps you sane. So no, Elena, you're not the villain here. You didn't ruin that night. You saved yourself from years of repeating it. You asked for respect, not perfection. And if that makes you the bad guy to anyone, they're missing the point. You didn't walk away to hurt them. You did it to finally breathe. Before we jump into the next story, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let us know your favorite part in the comments. AITA for asking my husband's family not to tie our baby's future to a tradition I don't believe in. My name is Reese, I'm 28, and I live with my husband Ethan in Coimbatore. We've been married for 3 years, and a few months ago, we welcomed our first child, a little girl named Julieta. She was everything we had ever dreamed of, and her tiny hands and curious eyes filled our small apartment with more joy than I had ever imagined possible. Every time she giggled or reached for a crayon, it felt like the world had paused just for her. Ethan's family owns a large piece of land in a small nearby village. They've lived there for generations and are deeply proud of their work. They raise goats, sell milk, make cheese, and manage crops in a way that has been passed down through countless family members. Their pride in the land, in the animals, in their traditions is palpable. They are good people, honest and hardworking, but our lives are strikingly different. I grew up in the city, with concrete under my feet and art classes as my escape. My parents instilled in me a love for painting and drawing, for colors and shapes over livestock and milking schedules. Now I work part-time teaching drawing classes to children, a job that fills me with small, steady happiness, but one that leaves me worlds away from the rhythm of Ethan's family life. Everything between us was peaceful for the first few months after Julieta's birth. Visits to the village were cordial. The farm smelled of hay, goats, and soil, and I felt grateful for the warmth in Cassidy's and Jack's eyes. But a few weeks ago, everything shifted. During what was meant to be a casual Sunday lunch, Cassidy and Jack broached the subject of a gift for Julieta, a gift steeped in their family tradition. Every grandchild gets their own goat from our farm, Cassidy said, her hands fluttering as she spoke. We raise it for them, and whatever comes from it, milk, offspring, profit, goes into a savings account for their future. It's our way of giving them a start in life. They were glowing with pride, and I could see in their eyes that they truly believed this was a demonstration of love and care. To them, it was a tradition that had continued unbroken for generations, a promise of security and continuity. But for me, it didn't feel right, not in the slightest. I've been vegetarian almost my entire life. I have immense respect for farmers and their work. I understand the importance of sustainability and hard labor, but I have never been comfortable with animals being treated as investments or tools. When they described the goats being raised, sold, or replaced to secure Julieta's savings, a chill ran through me. I froze, my mind spinning. It wasn't anger I felt, just a deep, gnawing discomfort that lodged in my chest. The idea of Julieta growing up thinking of her gift as a goat, an animal that might not even survive survive to adulthood, that could be sold or slaughtered as needed, made me feel a profound unease. I couldn't imagine her asking one day, with innocent curiosity, "Where's my goat?" and me having to explain the harsh reality behind what her grandparents thought of as a blessing. That night, I spoke to Ethan. I found him in the living room, holding Julietta as she dozed against his chest. I felt a lump in my throat. I don't know how to say this," I began. "I appreciate their gesture, truly, but I don't feel comfortable with it. I don't want her tied to a tradition that involves an animal being used in a way that might not align with her or our values." He listened quietly, his thumb stroking Julietta's hair. Then he said softly, "I understand, Reese, but to them, this isn't about selling animals. It's about giving her a start in life, just like they gave every other grandchild." "I know," I said, fighting back tears. "I know that's what they mean, but I can't help the feeling that it's wrong for her, that it's wrong for us. I just can't." He hesitated. "I'll support whatever you decide, but I won't lie, they'll be disappointed." I nodded, knowing he was right. I spent the next few days in a state of anxious indecision. Part of me wanted to say yes, let them do it, keep the peace, and avoid conflict, but another part of me couldn't. Every time I imagined Julietta asking, "Where's my goat?" I felt my stomach tighten, my chest constrict. Finally, after a sleepless night spent staring at Julietta as she kicked her tiny legs in dreams, I resolved to talk to Cassidy directly. It was a calm Sunday morning when I dialed her number. The phone rang twice before she picked up, her voice cheerful, almost too bright. "Reese, how is our little Julietta today?" she asked, cooing in that way only grandmothers can. "We've picked her the perfect young goat, a white one with a brown patch on its ear. You should see how beautiful she is." I took a deep breath. "Amma, I really appreciate what you and Apple want to do," I said gently, "but I'm not comfortable with the goat idea. I would love it if you could contribute in another way, maybe a small savings account or something for her education." The silence on the phone stretched painfully. I could almost hear the cogs turning in Cassidy's mind. Then she spoke, very softly. "Reese, do you not want our blessings for Julietta?" I swallowed hard, trying to find the right words. "It's not that I don't want your blessings. I respect your love and your family. I want to honor that. I don't think this particular way is right for us." Her tone shifted. "You city girls always think you know better. This is not about money. This is about our family's heart." Her words landed like stones in my chest. I wanted to argue, to explain, but the lump in my throat made it impossible. I hung up feeling small, guilty, and exhausted. Later that evening, Ethan received a long message from his father, Jack, on WhatsApp. The tone was not angry, but cold enough to make my stomach turn. "If she doesn't want to accept our tradition, that's her choice. But don't expect us to treat Julietta differently later when all her cousins have what we gave them." It hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt my hands shake. Was I being unreasonable? Was I disrespecting a deeply meaningful tradition? The days that followed were filled with tension. Phone calls went unanswered, messages were curt. Every interaction felt like walking on eggshells. I could sense Ethan trying to mediate, but even he seemed frustrated and torn, caught between loyalty to his family and respect for me. I started to question myself. Maybe I had been too harsh. Maybe I was overreacting. But every time I imagined Julietta's tiny eyes looking up at me, I knew I couldn't let that discomfort be ignored. The tension escalated further when Cassidy called Ethan later that week, ostensibly to check in. But what began as a seemingly benign conversation quickly turned into a silent standoff. Her words were polite, but there was a sharpness to them that left Ethan frowning at his phone for hours afterward. I overheard snippets, phrases like, "You must respect our family," and "Traditions are what keep us alive as a family," being muttered under her breath. One evening, Ethan and I sat down, exhausted and frustrated, trying to have a calm discussion. "Reese," he said quietly, "I understand why you feel this way, but they see this as love. They see it as their way of giving Julietta a future. If we push too hard, we risk alienating them completely." "I know," I said, my voice trembling. "I know, but I can't let her grow up thinking a goat is her inheritance, her future. I just can't." We argued more that night than we had in months. Words that were carefully chosen in other contexts slipped into frustration and fear. I accused him of being too soft, of bending too easily to his family. He accused me of being too rigid, of not understanding the depth of their traditions. It was painful. It felt like a wedge was being driven not only between me and his family, but between us. After that tense call with Cassidy, months passed with almost no contact. There were no visits, no video calls to see Julietta. Every time her name came up, I felt a pang of guilt and frustration. I knew Ethan missed his family deeply, but he never said it out loud. I could see it in the way he lingered on his phone, scrolling through old photos of the farm, the goats, and family gatherings, before slipping the phone back into his pocket with a sigh. He was caught in the middle, between loyalty to his parents and respect for my wishes, and I hated seeing him torn like that. The first few weeks of silence felt almost bearable. I told myself it was just a temporary pause, a cooling off period after the argument. But as the weeks stretched into months, the absence became became heavier. Julieta asked innocently one day, "Where's Alma's farm? Can we go?" I had to force a smile, explaining vaguely that it was far away and we would visit someday. Her bright eyes didn't understand, and I felt a stab of guilt. This was the first time I realized how much my decisions were affecting not just my own emotions, but hers too. Then, one evening, as I was feeding Julieta a bottle of warm milk, my phone buzzed. It was a Facebook message from Juniper, Ethan's cousin. My heart skipped. I hadn't heard from anyone in months. She wrote, "Auntie and uncle have been upset, but they miss Julieta a lot. They think you don't want them in her life." I stared at the message for a long time. My hands trembled slightly, the bottle nearly slipping from Julieta's tiny grasp. Was that really how they saw it? That I was keeping them away? That I had somehow become the villain in this story of family tradition? My chest tightened, and for the first time in weeks, I felt the full weight of loneliness, isolation, and misunderstanding pressing down on me. I debated for hours before picking up the phone. That night, I called Cassidy. She answered, her voice low and tired, lacking the cheer she normally carried. I could hear the fatigue in her tone, the months of worry and unspoken frustration. "Reese," she said softly, "we haven't stopped thinking about Julieta, and I need to tell you, the goat we picked, it was sold months ago." I blinked, caught off guard. Relief and guilt swirled inside me. Relief that the goat, the symbol of tension, was gone. Guilt that it had taken this long to bridge the silence. Then she said something that I had never expected, her voice cracking slightly. "I realized maybe we've been holding on to traditions that don't make sense to everyone. When we were young, these things meant safety, stability. But maybe it's time we find new ways." Her admission hit me harder than I expected. She sounded vulnerable, almost human in a way that reminded me they weren't just guardians of an unyielding tradition, but parents and grandparents trying to do right by their family. "We don't want Julieta to feel left out," she continued. "So we started something else instead." My mind raced. Something else? I asked cautiously, wary that this might be another source of conflict. She explained that they had opened a small education fund in Julieta's name, just like they used to do for the goats, but this time it came from selling milk and produce, not animals. They even named the account Julieta's Light Fund. I felt tears prick my eyes. Months of tension, worry, and guilt seemed to unravel in that moment. Relief washed over me, and I cried quietly while holding Julieta, imagining a future where her education and opportunities weren't tied to an animal she didn't even understand. Then came the next hurdle. Jack called later that week. He didn't apologize. That wasn't his way. But the conversation was cautious, formal, tinged with emotion he tried to hide. "We hope you visit soon," he said. "Your mother-in-law made lattice for Julieta." The invitation felt like a fragile olive branch. Ethan and I debated whether we should go. Would it be safe? Would tensions rise again? Would old wounds fester? Eventually, we decided to visit. When we arrived at the farm, the sight of Cassidy waiting on the porch, Julieta in her arms, made my heart constrict and then soften. "No goats this time, just blessings," she whispered, handing Julieta over to me. "The end. Reese, you're not the AITA, not by a long shot. You didn't reject love, you just drew a line between what felt right and what didn't. What you did wasn't rebellion, it was clarity. You respected their roots, but you also knew where your own started, and that's what makes this whole situation more about boundaries than betrayal." The goat thing? I get it. For them, it's not about money. It's a symbol of care, stability, and family tradition. But for you, it wasn't just a goat. It represented something that didn't sit right in your heart. You weren't judging their way of life. You were protecting the kind of values you want Julieta to grow up with. You wanted her first lesson in generosity to come from compassion, not commerce. That's not arrogance. It's parenting with intention. Your in-laws took it personally because, to them, saying no to the goat felt like saying no to their legacy. But you didn't mean it that way. You were just saying, "Hey, we love what you're offering, but this doesn't fit us." The silence that followed hurt, sure, but silence isn't always punishment. Sometimes it's just everyone taking time to process something new. And honestly, Cassidy's call later on, that was a real turning point. She didn't just soften, she grew. Her decision to create Julieta's Light Fund instead of gifting another goat was the perfect blend of their tradition and your perspective. She kept the love but lost the livestock, and that's what healthy adaptation looks like. You didn't erase their customs, you helped them evolve. Ethan handled things the best way he could too. He was caught between two worlds, his family's pride and your discomfort, and that's never an easy spot. But he listened, even when he didn't have all the answers. The fact that you both found your way back to understanding after the arguments says a lot about how strong your partnership really is. By the time you went back to the farm, it wasn't about winning or losing anymore. It was about reconnecting. Cassidy, holding Julieta and whispering, "No goats this time, just blessings," said everything that needed to be said. That was her way of telling you she understood. And if I can toss in a bit of joke here, if emotional tension were a workout, you'd be running marathons by now. But hey, at least all that effort led somewhere meaningful. You didn't burn bridges, you just cleared some overgrown grown weeds off the path. So no, Reese, you're not the AITA. You didn't attack tradition, you simply redefined it. You stood by what you believed without disrespecting anyone, and in the end, your choice didn't break the family, it reshaped it. Julietta's future now carries both your values and theirs, and that's the best kind of inheritance she could have. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Got a story to share? Drop it in the comments, and let us know which one was your favorite. If you enjoyed this video, you'll definitely want to check out AITA for ghosting my friend at my own wedding. Click here to watch it now.